Alright, the Kayanee Sewmaster, little hand machine here. I've got it cleaned and unplugged, so now we have to figure out how to cut a needle for it, because it doesn't take regular size needles. It needs to have a needle that's trimmed for it. Because first of all, it doesn't fit a standard, a regular shank needle. It only has the tiny hole, so it'll fit the regular, like the standard part of the needle, but it won't fit the big clamping shank. So I guess I'm going to take this first needle, actually going to take this needle, I think, and I'm going to trim it right where it starts to flare here, and we'll see if that's the right length or if it needs to be shorter. And then once I have a guess for a needle length, we can start looking at whether or not it sews. However, I also need to put the covers back on, or at least at minimum we need the covers that have thread guides on them. So I'll have to stick the presser foot back on too. This front cover is sprung, so I have to get it started and then then tighten both of those screws. Alright. And put our presser foot back on. Line it up with the hole in our needle plate, because that's it does lift, so before we get too far. Alright, it pulls material through, so it will make a stitch of some kind, or it should be able to make a stitch of some kind. It's very important that you have feed on a chain stitch machine, because the chain stitch is dependent on the fabric being in the way of the thread. More so than a lock stitch machine. A lock stitch machine may bunch up, but it doesn't bunch up nearly as quickly as chain stitch will. Still has that tight spot that I don't like, and I'm trying to figure out what. I'm not sure about that. Anyhow, I'm gonna cut this needle off now and see if we can check this out. Alright. So see, I got a needle in the Sewmaster. It's got a screw for a needle clamp. And you'll notice that there is a very deep hole in here. And I can slide this needle very, very far up into the machine. So I have to do two things here. Get the needle just in enough to get clamped. And also, then I have to turn it so that the eye is facing sideways, because this machine threads from the outside in, and then the hook goes through the scarf on the inside of the needle to gather the loop. So I'm gonna fiddle with that until I get it in the right direction. Alright, I've had this needle in and I gripped it as low as I could, and when I put it all the way in and it goes all the way down, it's not reaching the eye down past the hook that's supposed to gather the thread. So I'm gonna have to go looking for a much longer needle to cut off to put in this machine. That, or I'll have to get creative about mounting this needle. Alright, needle solution for this Kayanee Sewmaster toy. I looked up online, it said a 12x1 needle is the original needle. That's the broken needle that came with it. I guess the screwdriver is magnetic. I always forget that. And you can see how that shank is very skinny. I cross-referenced, and the closest needle size I could find was the DBX1 industrial machine. It's supposed to have the same measurement according to 12x1 from the eye to the end of the shank. So I had to grind the shank down to a smaller diameter, but it is a round shank, and it's smaller than a home sewing machine standard needle shank. So I ground that down, one of these needles down, to fit in the Kayanee Sewmaster, and now I have a needle that's fit in the machine. And I ground that down using my Dremel diamond cutoff blade in a drill, and I had that rotating, turning in my drill, and then I mounted the needle in my Dremel chuck so that the Dremel was spinning the needle shank very fast and going against the grinding wheel, and that sort of created a tool grinder or a valve grinder setup where both pieces are rotating, so that the shank was ground rounder than if I had just held the needle in place and tried to grind it off by just moving the Dremel across it. So having both pieces move made the modified shank round, And now we can see if we can make this Kayanee sew. Okay. DB1X. Shank is ground. Got it in there. The hole in here is very deep, and I don't think that even the original needles would seat fully into here. I think you had to set them using this to the correct height using the screw, because this needle originally, it's very hard to see that. Originally, the first time I put it in, I put the shank all the way in as far as I could, and the needle did not reach down. The eye didn't go past the hook in here that's supposed to form the loop of the thread. So I looked carefully and made sure that the eye was coming down below the hook. And I also had to rotate the needle to try and get the eye square, which it actually looks like it's a bit like this, so I need to rotate it again. There, okay. Okay, yeah, I think that looks square now. The needle bar does rotate a little bit, but now with it square, look in there and see what's our... There's a very big gap. Very big gap behind the needle there. So I'm gonna bend this hook out a teeny bit. Oh, did I get real lucky on the first try? No. Alright. There we go. Okay. That might be it. Alright, I think we're close to sewing. So I'm going to grab some thread and we'll see if we can make this do a stitch.